How's everyone doing?
Good.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you guys for those who are tuning in online. You guys are in for a special hour, and I'm so excited. For those of you guys who I haven't met, my name is Perry Hirth. I am an agent here in the office. Been around a long time, and we do these monthly. And I think, I don't know who I said it to, but I said this might be one of the coolest things I selfishly get to do all year is hang out with Julia.
He says that to all the girls, huh? He says all.
So Julie and I joke that, so I was a team leader at our Uptown office from 2010 to 2012, 3 years. And I joke that my best accomplishment in Uptown as a team leader, we were above Bar Abilene at the time, was actually hiring with our general manager, Kim, hiring Julia to be our MCA. So we have a long history of working together, but literally haven't worked side by side since then. Was that 2011?
Probably.
Probably 2011. And yeah, she's amazing. So I'm just going to be quiet and we can just listen to her all hour. So welcome, Julia. Thank you for doing this. If you would just, let's start by just telling us, where you grew up, where you're from, what did you do before real estate, and how you ended up getting into the business.
I am from Seattle, Washington, but we moved here in high school, and I didn't do anything before real estate. I've been licensed since I was 18 years old. Yeah. This is my only thing. Other than work at a call center, I did do that. Like I worked at a call center, part-time AT&T for a while, but I got licensed right away when I was 18, and I joined. Then I feel like it was back in my time, back in my day, you joined either the big blue or the big red. It's just like what everybody see. Well, you're like, yep, that's what you do in Minnesota. You join this one or you join this one, and I joined this one, and I was with that brokerage for 5 years maybe, and then I went to like a little small indie brokerage for a small time, and there was a lady named Rosie. I don't know if you ever remember Rosie Nato. Do you remember her? Rosie was at this indie brokerage with me, and we didn't care for our broker much. And she came and she's like, I met this guy named John, and they're starting this thing called Keller Williams, which we had not heard of here before. And she said, I'm gonna go there, and he's nice, and you should go there too.
He's nice.
Yeah, that was it. Literally, and the real story, when I came and met him, which was before we met, which was 2005, I met him. It was a startup. It was in the basement of the Citadel building on Lake Street. And I met this guy. Now you remember Matt? Yeah, and I met this guy named John, and he recruited me to work there. And I actually joined because he looked rich. He looks like he used to wear all these gold necklaces, and like I was like, this guy looks rich. I should work with him. and that's literally why I joined Keller Williams.
So we have some guests in the room. Just for context, what year did you get licensed?
Yep.
And why did you dive into real estate at 18? Because that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then secondly, for those who don't know who John is, who's John?
Yeah. So 2000, I got licensed in 2000. And barely, I had to wait because I actually wasn't old enough to get licensed yet. But I got licensed in, was it 99? It was 99 or 2000. And I did that because in high school, when you take these little career assessments, it said I should be a property manager. So I went to Kaplan to get a license to be a property manager. But when I was in school, people were talking about selling real estate. That sounded like a way better gig. And it sounded easy enough, so I thought I could do it. So that's how I got licensed. And then when 2005, John Butler was the OP, the operating principal, also though he was the team leader at the time. And so that's why I was meeting with him, was because he was the team leader who was recruiting me to become an agent there. And so after 5 years of stuff, I found Keller Williams. Best decision ever. Yeah.
And then what? What happened next?
And then there's the short stint where I ran away from home. We don't talk about that. I was actually a broker at a competitor. And that's when I came back. So I probably around the time when the market was I remember when I was gone for 3 years. We don't talk about that. We just say that I've been consistently with Keller Williams the whole time. But I was actually the broker at a competitor. I call you all. This is Twin Cities. I was the broker at Home Avenue. And I was that until well, it was the crash and we were having some trouble. And Greg was like, we should go sell houses. And I was like, you should go sell houses. I'm going back to KW and I'm going to be in MCA, which is when I met you and Kim. And then I was the MCA for a while, like 5 years. I was the MCA. And then Keller Williams started talking about coaching programs, right? Being coaches. And at that time, Tom Vance was our OP and he was flying in these like people from California to be these coaches, coach extraordinaire. And I said to John, would you let me do it? Can I do it? And I like, let me apply for it. And they did let me do it. So then I was the coach and we started all these coaching programs at the Lakes Market Center. And I did that for like another, 5 years or so or something until I had started a team during that time, Signature Group. We were actually, the purpose was we were going to expand and do expansion into Dallas. And I had been watching like Housewives of Dallas. And I was like, I want to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So I'll go to Dallas and we'll be Signature Group Luxury. And that was the idea. That was my idea. And that was 2020, right? 2019, when I had a whole bunch of life situations happen in 2019. And God had a different plan. That did not ever happen. I never sold luxury homes to any of the housewives of Dallas. Although we do still aspire, it didn't happen that way. Yeah.
I just asked why you left John looking so rich to go to Home Avenue.
At the time, why did I ever take the job?
Well, yeah, like why?
Yeah. The market was kind of fluctuating. That was in that downtime was starting to turn down. And I remember specifically, I actually called myself divorcing real estate because I had 6 transactions in a row. And I was like, I don't screw this. And there was a paycheck.
Kind of a different.
There was an actual salary attached to it. And I thought, well, that sounds way easier what I'm doing. And so I took the role, instead of selling, I took the role of being an office manager because of so much market fluctuation. And I was so upset that all my transactions were falling apart because what we didn't know was we were on the precipice of a whole market crash. Yeah, that's what happened.
Got it. Yeah. I thought maybe John was losing some necklaces.
No, not at all. John has always been great from that very day on. Yeah.
Thanks for the question. Again, if this is your first time attending, this is a very casual environment. Ask away. So please don't be shy. So your roles, you've had a lot of roles within KW. Currently, you have a lot of roles. You started coaching, and then how did you grow into where we are today?
Yeah. So in 2019, which I'm sure we'll probably get to, I had a whole bunch of life challenges, but I did eventually get to Dallas. It was December of 2019 when I actually made it to Dallas, Texas. And then I had a role there in leadership at a market center there. And I was going to, of course, start this team. And then 2 months in, I remember I got really sick. I got sent home from the market center. I was a director of growth there, and I was super sick. It was February, it was February. It was because it was family reunion, and I was sick there. I was coughing all over everybody, sneezing all over. I was so sick. I had a fever out of this world, and they sent me home. It turns out it was this thing called COVID that everybody had. And that changed a lot of things, right? And so we all got sent home. The whole world got sent home. And also what happened after that, as you all know, is George Floyd was killed here in Minneapolis. And Gary Keller started a social equity task force. And because I was in Texas and they had heard that I did work with that, they did diversity work, or that KWU actually called me and said, and that I taught classes and I wrote classes and a lot of fair housing classes I had written. Keller Williams University actually called and said, would you do a 20-minute master class on social equity for family reunion? And it was virtual, of course, because it was COVID in 2020. And so I said, sure, I'll make up a class in 20 minutes and stand up and monologue for literally yeah, tomorrow. Can you do it tomorrow? And so I made up a 20-minute master class and I stood in the kitchen at our market center in Dallas and I did a 20-minute masterclass on social equity. And I guess Gary saw that, and then they asked if we could do an interview for family reunion. So we did an interview, and story goes, like, so the way we do it when we do like those kind of interviews is you practice it a couple of days before you do the thing. So I had this practice session on a Tuesday with Gary and Daniel Dixon, and I thought it went really well. I was surprised he wasn't more impressed with me than he was, but he wasn't. He wasn't. He was just like very Gary, right? And then when we did it on a Thursday, he didn't ask any of the questions that we practiced at all. He went way off script. And he actually started, which took me by complete surprise. He says, "So Julia, explain racism to me." Like, what? Exactly. I'm like, this is not what we practice at all, like at all. And then I was like, so then he made a statement and he tried to tie it down. You all understand tie downs, right? With these kind of, wouldn't you agree? Right. But I didn't agree, Perry. So I was like,
Was this live? I'm sorry, or was it taped?
no, it was recorded.
Okay.
It was recorded. So I said, no, I wouldn't agree. And he rephrased like we're taught to do and used a different tie down. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't agree. And we got in this little spat, like, and I was so thrown off for the rest of the interview. I even hung up. When I hung up and cried and I called John Butler. It was like, oh my God, I just got in a fight with Gary Keller. Like, I was so embarrassed. But I wouldn't say, and he was like, why? I said, I wouldn't say what he wanted me to say.
Do you remember what he asked?
I don't even remember what it was, but I was just like, nope, don't agree with you. But what ended up happening at the end of it, I did say, hey, Gary, can you have them cut the little thing we did at the beginning? Because I don't think it's going to look good for me or you. And that's not what I wanted to convey at all. And he said, what did you want to convey? And I told him, I've had an extraordinary career at Keller Williams. Everything I've ever wanted to do in real estate, whether it be inside of Keller Williams or outside of Keller Williams, I've been able to do because much attributed to our leadership, John and Tom. And I know that's not everybody's testimony. And I just want to talk to the leaders to tell them how it could be everybody's story. I want everybody here to feel like that. And long story short, a couple of weeks later, I get a call on my Google phone number. They're like, this is a call from Gary. And I'm thinking like, Gary who? Right? Like, hello? And he's like, yes, Julia, this is Gary. I'm like, Gary Keller? Yeah. And he asked me a question about the Social Equity Task Force and if we had talked about somebody leading it. And I said, yeah. They said somebody was going to lead it. And they said, you were going to pay this person. And they said, you were going to do all these things. Long story short, I ended up in Austin leading the Social Equity Task Force Initiative, which turned into head of inclusion and belonging to do exactly what I told him I wanted to do, which was to make our market centers a space where everybody could have an absolutely excellent, fabulous career, no matter who they were or what they looked like or where they came from or any of those things, but to help our leaders create spaces where we all could thrive. And that's my job right now. Yeah.
Goosebumps.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did it go? You dive into this role, then what?
How did it go?
Yeah.
It went. Yeah. It's going. You know, it was actually it was an incredibly challenging role. And what I learned was everybody wasn't our market center. And it was challenging and also the best thing I've ever done. Because I had an opportunity to meet so many people. And moreover, because you have an opportunity to actually connect with people to help people think bigger and differently. And so that was a unique opportunity. And so how did it go? I don't know. I guess we're still writing that story, but I think it's gone well because we are still the largest real estate franchise that has 160,000 agents in 58 countries. And the only reason you can do that is because you are an inclusive company that is inclusive of everyone's beliefs and thoughts and ideas and lifestyles and all of those things. So I think it's going well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's important work, and we literally could spend the whole hour talking about all that encompasses your role there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you're an agent, you're in that role. you teach CE, right? So we talk about that a little bit. And also most recently, many of you may or may not know this, but you've been named the operating principal at the Minneapolis Lakes office. Let's talk about some of those things and what is that all
Isn't
mean?
that a full circle story, right? Like I met this guy named John and he was the OP and now I'm the OP. But it is a lot of different hats and it's a lot of different roles. And I was just sharing, we were just talking about, I think to me, are you all familiar with Y4C2Ts? I won't make you do, normally when I go places, I make everybody do the dance. Did you know there's a dance?
Yeah.
associated with the Y4C2T?
He taught us the dance.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. So, but my part of the Y4C2Ts is the E, equity opportunities for all. And I think the most important thing about what you said there is the beauty in Keller Williams is there are so many opportunities. There's so many things you could do, not just in the real estate industry, but under the umbrella of Keller Williams. People don't even realize how many different things you could potentially do and how many different roles there are. And like I said, well, if you get sick of something, don't worry, there's something else to do. Trust me, there's plenty to do in the organization. I think that's the best part of what you said is all of the things I've done, I've been able to do still under the umbrella of Keller Williams because there are so many opportunities that you can tap into to be and do so many things. I mean, we could talk about that for 24 hours straight. You could be a maps coach, you could be a this, you could be a that, you could be a, and it goes on and on and on about all the opportunities that exist. Yeah. You could sell houses, you could get sick of selling houses, and then you could be the MCA, you could get sick of being the MCA, then you could be the productivity coach, you could, you could do all the things. You could be a KBU instructor, you could be a master faculty, you could be a, so on and so forth for days. Yeah.
Right. And you do them all, and you're an agent.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing them all though. Yeah. Not be my recommendation. My recommendation would be to focus and do your one thing really well. That would be my recommendation.
And you've done all these roles incredibly well. So just to give you guys perspective, the Signature Group, which we interviewed Trey, was it last year? Maybe the year before. So Trey Adams was this year. Signature Group.
And Lashay was here too.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, that's right. Did 133 units, 48 million in volume, 1.1 million in gross commission income in 2024. Amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could go a million different ways with this, and I got a list of questions, but does anybody else have some questions as we pause for a second? Mr. Johnson.
So you just said you wouldn't recommend doing them all the jobs.
Not all at the same time.
Instead, you should focus on your one thing.
Yeah.
What's your one thing?
That's great. I think right now still my one thing is helping people in my mission statement, because also a Quantum Leap instructor, because in my mission statement that we create in Quantum Leap is to help people build big lives and big businesses. And I believe the best way to do that is through entrepreneurship and specifically real estate. So my one thing is to help people who want to live big lives and build big businesses do that. And so being an OP allows me to help all of the business owners in our market center do that. Being the head of inclusion and belonging allows me to help people that I meet along the way to do that. And in fact, if it's not helping people do that, at this point, I'm uninterested in doing it. If it's not going to help me do my one thing, that's my one thing. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who else?
Out of all those things, what do you enjoy doing the most? What brings you the most joy?
Meeting with agents brings me to meeting people, I think, probably at this point. There are so many different kinds of, you all would be shocked how many different kinds of people actually exist out there. I meet people and fascinating is my favorite word. And it's just like, wow, that is fascinating. and I mean that in so many different ways, because it's just like, I have never heard that. And oh my God, but I think it is actually my favorite thing to do because a number of reasons. Just the reality that the world is so divided, and it's interesting how ridiculous it is. Because the reality is we are more alike than we are unalike. But I think my favorite thing in meeting people is learning different perspectives to possibly share another one. Like, it's like, wow, that's a fascinating perspective. Would you mind if I shared? I have a perspective. And I don't know, I guess bridging that gap, I think is probably my favorite thing to do is just meet all the different people. And by the way, I respect all the perspectives, no matter how ridiculous they are. Sometimes they are just the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Literally, I'm just like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever. Also, I'm interested in knowing why you know, where that came from. And I like learning about that because everybody does have a reason of why they think the way they think or believe the way they believe. Or, you know, it's interesting to me to learn about people because it helps me help more people if I understand what is it behind. Tell me more. You know, that's also my other favorite thing. That's fascinating. Tell me more about that. And they do. And but I think my favorite part is learning so many things about so many different people. People are really fascinating, and that I mean in a good way. People are
Dallas housewives are the most fascinating.
well, that would be the least of it, honey.
Oh.
There are way more fascinating people out there than that. People get really fascinating, and I'm intrigued by that.
But you wanted to go work with them, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I was wondering.
Oh yeah, well because the houses, it wasn't about them, it was the
Oh,
houses.
okay.
Yeah.
I was taught once, if you're ever frustrated, turn that word into fascinated and see how it feels.
Yeah.
Replace the word frustrated with fascinated. Yeah, it feels.
Yeah.
So Julie, you didn't have any formal training in equity or diversity before you took this role because you do it. So I've heard you speak before. You do it so well. Like how did you learn and develop your curriculum? Is that just from personal experience?
Yeah, it is literally from meeting people.
Okay.
I wrote classes. I wrote a lot of fair housing classes. And here, I was the president of any diversity, anything you can think of. I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of experience in it. No formal education, like I didn't go to school, you know,
Right.
for
Because you
that.
didn't major in it.
Yeah, I didn't major in it
Uh-huh.
other than in real life, like School of
Yeah.
Hard Knocks, right? Like I
Right.
learned about people the hard way.
Yeah.
But no, I think everybody could theoretically become an expert in it if they just talked to more people. And with an open mind of that's fascinating. Tell me more about that. I know we're getting off track because you have a whole bunch of
Oh, it's all
questions.
good.
But I on my way back from doing my TED Talk, I met a guy named David on a plane. And I sat next to David. And in fact, every flight after that, I fly a lot. Every flight after that, I would be sitting next to these guys that were nothing like me. I mean, nothing like me. And for whatever reason, we would engage in a conversation. And I say for whatever reason, but it always actually was tied to real estate somehow. Anyways, I met David, and I was sitting next to him, and he was telling me about these properties he owns in the middle of nowhere, like farmland and these cabins that he was remodeling. And he was talking to me about the election that hadn't happened yet, right? And he was going to be voting for Trump, and here's all the reasons why. And he was telling me his political beliefs and his business beliefs. And he was a veterinarian. And not like cats and dogs. He was like horses and cows and pigs, big money veterinarian, right? And he owned a veterinary clinic that he had sold to an associate seller, and we started talking about seller financing. So he was explaining to me, by the way, I know how to cut up a moose. Okay, I don't know if you ever want to know how to cut up a moose, but he had just killed mooses, meese.
Whatever the plural is.
Anyways, he had just come from a hunting trip and killed a moose, plural. And I was like, well, how the heck do you move a moose? So he taught me how to move moose. So I mean, I'm learning, I'm going through the phone, I'm seeing all the shots. His nephew had just had his first elk. Yeah, I'm learning all these things that are just like, trust you me, I would never be out there hunting moose. I'm more of a Hilton kind of girl. I won't be, but it was his conversation was so fascinating because he was nothing like me, right? Nothing like me. And so he's sharing all his perspectives, and it was a fascinating conversation. And of course, I too had commentary, but I chose for 2 hours to share none, because instead I got to learn all about David and seller financing, a veterinary clinic and the land on it that he sold, and mooses, and elk, and his political views, and his conservative views. And I just learned a lot about David. And to me, that's fascinating because that's a different perspective than mine. And the most interesting part about that, I think he started talking to me because I had my economics model. I was working on some stuff, and he wanted to talk about real estate. But the most interesting part is when we got off the plane, David chased me down in the airport and was like, wait, Julia, I've got to get your phone number in case we can do business, you know? And I thought, well, if people would just shut up and listen more, we could probably all just do business, right? Like, and it was, and then he, of course, him and his wife, she was on the plane too, like invited me to come out to the middle of nowhere to the kids. I was like, no, I'll pass. I'm good, but I appreciate the invitation. Not my thing. But so to the point of that's what I enjoy most is learning about people, particularly because we are in a people business, yes. And I actually want to do business with more people. So I appreciated the fact that he, for whatever reason, thought that someday I might sell veterinary clinics, or I don't know, but it was just the fascination of coming to some, it was meeting David. And then after that, I met a guy named Clinton that owned a mechanic shop, and he had the only license for mechanic shops in Southlake, Texas. And we had a conversation and several beers because we had free, not beers, he had a beer, I had other stuff. We had free drink coupons, but me and Clinton had a conversation for 2 hours on a plane. And then the next guy was, and it's just conversation, which is actually how we do more business, is by having conversations, ideally with people who aren't like us. So, I have no idea why I went there.
Love it.
Sorry.
Where
are we going with
That
that?
leads me to ask about, probably very interesting, so you did a TED Talk. Tell us about that for a second.
I did. I did a TED Talk called Why DEI Can't Die, in a very interesting time, where the idea is for well, I'll say this, most companies are the headline reads, companies are dismantling their DEI. Do you actually read the article? Not really. Also, I did it because the way that Keller Williams has done diversity, equity, and inclusion, I feel has been different than like a college would do diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't have metrics or any of those types of things. The purpose of our diversity, equity, and inclusion is so that all the people can have access to all the opportunities in all the market centers, simply put, right? So we've always done it a little different than like a corporate HR company would do it. What really is happening now is that they are dismantling the more corporate version, and I believe they're just doing what we've been doing the whole time. So, but the headline reads, Walmart's no longer doing DEI. This morning I saw one that was, what's the social media platform? Meta. Yeah, this morning I read Meta dismantling, but when you read it, they're still doing the ERGs. They're still doing all the things that we call diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the talk was about why DEI can't die. One, because most people misunderstand what the DEI even is. So part of that was me wanting to explain the way we do it. And the other part of that was a direct response to Elon Musk. It came from, he went on this whole DEI must die thing, which, by the way, did you all know that was really about his son? His son came out as like transgender, or he didn't used to feel this way. His son is a member of the LGBTQ, and he was mad about the transition that that was a personal thing. And so he went on this whole rampage because it personally affected his child, not because he doesn't really. So anyways, it was a response to his DEI must die. It was a response to, well, here's how we do it. And that we would never say it should die because we wouldn't be the largest real estate franchise in 58 countries if we didn't believe in people being diverse and having access to opportunities. We would never be Keller Williams. So, and also those companies also aren't necessarily dismantling the whole thing. It's, you got to read through the clickbait. Yeah. Yeah.
Everything you got.
Yeah. You got to read through the
People and
clickbait.
like-
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what it was about. And that's why I did it. And it was super fun and one of the best experiences ever.
Wow. Wow. We'll have to watch it.
And have y'all watched it? You should watch it. Yeah.
And we can find it on YouTube. I'm betting we could.
You can
okay.
just YouTube.
Make sure we
Julie
send it
Lashay. Yeah.
So if you're giving advice to whether it's the mega agents in the room or the brand new agents, what opportunities do you see in the Twin Cities? What advice would you give them to build their business today?
Because I've had the opportunity to actually travel the world and go to so many market centers and meet so many agents, I actually would encourage people to get out of this town and see how other people are doing it. Whatever you're trying to do in your business, somebody is out there doing it times 10, and find them. Because the great thing about, of course, this organization is you don't have to reinvent any wheels. There are systems and models. And if you want to if you want to sell veterinary clinics in the middle of nowhere, I know who does that actually, and who sells land or who sells whatever, and go find them. And they will literally say, here's how I do it. here's my system and model. Don't reinvent any wheels. We're doing this at a high level. And the way that you can get out of this town and learn about that is you can go to family reunion. You can go to mega camp. You can go to agent masterminds. And I would encourage you to go to those things, to meet those people that really give you a different view of whatever it is you want to do. Somebody is doing it at a really, really high level. They'll be more than happy to give you their playbook. Guaranteed. Yeah.
And again, that's whether you're with our company or not, anyone is.
Sure, I'm sure you'll take guests. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I didn't have on my list, but I've been to some of your CE classes, which is always a treat. You talk a little bit about ownership gap in the Twin Cities, or tell us about some of the work you're doing in the community and
Homeownership gap. Yeah.
um,
Yes. So you're referring to the homeownership gap, which is the homeownership rates. Like generally speaking, in America, homeownership hovers around 65% ownership. In Minnesota, it's pretty high. It's like it's north of a 70% always, whether it be 73 or 77, it varies. However, the Black homeownership rate is typically the lowest here in Minnesota. So that disparity in homeownership rates, we call the homeownership gap. Also, though, I will say, having studied this for a lot of years, people always want to know why. Why is that? And why is Minnesota? And why is I also will say a lot of that is about data collection, because we have a large Somali population here as well. And that's considered, if you all remember taking the census, you got like 4 options. So a Black American and a Somali immigrant are the same box as well. So a lot of it is actually about religion or immigration. If they were going to use immigration standards in other states, and those kind of things, I think their numbers would be reflective differently as well. But that doesn't negate the fact that in general, in the United States, there's a homeownership gap that exists. And the solution is very easy. We all do believe in homeownership in here, yes? Okay, we all believe in homeownership in here. And our goal is to actually just go out and see how we can help whoever wants to get into homeownership, get into homeownership. The key to that is having the right resources, because people do come from different backgrounds and have different experiences and need different tools and resources. Like when people say DEI must die. Well, for us in real estate, a form of equity is down payment assistance. Can you imagine if we didn't have down payment assistance, how many people wouldn't have a house, right? Like that's a form of equity. And so we would never say, oh, we shouldn't do DEI, because equity in our world is down payment assistance. So knowing those resources and knowing those tools can help more people get into homeownership, particularly in Minnesota. Minnesota has more resources and nonprofits and funding and money than any state I've ever seen. As a licensed agent, you should know about it. Even if you don't want to do it, because I've had people in my class say, I'm gonna be honest with you, Julia, that's too much work. I'm not doing all that. Totally fair. We will gladly take your referral on my team. We do that. Yeah, like we would be happy to do that. So if it's not your thing, that's fine. I just want you to know where to send people, because my greatest fear is somebody comes up to you and says, Mary Beth, I want to buy a house. But my credit is bad. And I don't have a lot of money. I don't have the capital. You say, oh, that's such a bummer. It's such a great thing. I wish you could participate. That would be the worst thing on the world to have. What I would prefer is you to say, oh, there's certainly options for you to still be able to get into home ownership. And whether you want to be the person to employ those options or not, at least you steer them in the right direction. At least get them to the Minnesota Home Ownership Center. At least get them to an agent who does do that. Again, I raised my hand. My team would be happy to if you'd like to send us all your referrals. But that is the idea, to close the gap, is to simply provide the education and resources. But a lot of times they do come to agents first. And a lot of times, I can't tell you how many of our clients say, I've been to 5 agents. None of them would help me. That shouldn't happen. They should say, I went to one agent and they sent me to you, or I went to one agent and they had the resources. But we have to know what those resources are. And that in itself will help close that gap. Yeah.
So how do we equip all of them to know these resources? Minnesota
Home Ownership Center, I think it's hocmn.org, has a whole link for realtors, like for partners, that for you to educate yourself on how to have it. Or you can just go and take a first-time home buyers course, which is what I would recommend, to see what they're telling first-time home buyers, to see what programs are out there. And again, if you never want to dabble in that in your entire life, at least you know where to send people, so that you're not turning people away. Because there's a statistic out there that says if someone gains enough courage to actually go in and say, hey, I want to do this, and I don't really think I'm qualified to do it, that takes a lot of courage for some people. And you turn them away, they may not try again for 7 years. Can you imagine how much equity they could have lost or the damage you could do to somebody's life by 7 years of non-home ownership because they met you? So HOCMN.org is a good place to start. That'd be a good place to start. Yeah.
And is one of the CE classes that you teach dive into some of this? Because I feel like I sat in one.
I'm sure they all do. It's probably like in every class I teach. Yeah.
And are you still teaching CE or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, if you are, I'm doing the required module next week at our office. It's free if y'all want to come.
There you go.
Yeah.
Questions?
There's a question you had that we didn't get to that, like, I'm doing another TED Talk. This one's very different. This one is called From Setback to Setup. It's about, right now I don't remember the title. But it's about moving past life's personal challenges to create extraordinary leadership. Because I kind of skimmed over 2019 and was like, a whole bunch of bad stuff happened.
Yeah. Let's
yeah,
go there. I mean, we
yeah.
have
We
plenty
got
of time here.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
go there. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have about 25 minutes. That was going to be my next
Okay.
question,
yeah.
but so when's that TED Talk before we go to the question?
Don't know yet.
Okay, got it. So you've been through a lot, dealing with adversity. She leads with grace and passion and enthusiasm, and I've never, Julie, in all the years we've known each other, seen you in without a smile on your face, even through a lot of challenging times. Share with us what happened in 2019.
So 2019, I was in the middle of going through this ridiculous, terribly, horribly divorce, which wasn't the bad part. I was like, whatever. But my son came home from college. He was in his first year in college, and he came home from college with a pain in his leg. He had had it all year. He had been telling me about the pain all year. He was there on a track scholarship. He did high jump, long jump, triple jump. And even when I went and saw him, he was like not even putting up high school numbers. So he was like, I don't know, my leg hurts. I'm just going to not do it anymore. But when he came home for the summer, out of nowhere, he was playing basketball. He came home, was like, I can't feel my leg at all. Took him to the hospital. And long story short, that was the last day he ever walked. The kid had a tumor this big in the back of his leg, and he was already late stage 4 cancer when he went to the doctor that night. So he very quickly went downhill from that very day. And I remember, and this is the other story. Thank you for asking, because I rarely get to share this story about Keller Williams. I will never forget the day. It was July 29th, and I text Jen. She was our team leader. And because I was telling them like about Eric's leg, and because he was supposed to be helping me drive to Texas. We were moving already. House was empty. I was already moving to do this Housewives of Dallas thing. House was totally empty. The moving truck had left with all my stuff the night that and he was supposed to be helping me drive my truck, but he couldn't because his leg hurt. Anyways, I texted them the next day and said, oh my God, found out why Eric's leg hurts so bad. He's got cancer. And I think it was, I don't even know if it might have even been that same day or a few days or a few weeks later, because I had quit my job as coach at the office. I was moving to Dallas to do a whole new thing. I was starting a whole new life. I was going through this divorce. I was starting all fresh new. I had no job lined up. I was like about to go like grassroots this thing on this whole housewife. And they stood up at a team meeting and they raised money because I had no more money. Also, I had lost everything in my divorce, all the money, all the properties. I'm like, I have nothing, right? And now my son is dying. And they stood up in that team meeting and they raised that day $30,000 for me to take off of work and to spend with him. I was his caretaker 24/7. And I was literally at the hospital the whole time, and I was able to care for him the whole time because I never had to work. I sold listings I didn't even know I had. Forgot all about everybody just picked up the slack, right? Everybody picked up the slack. I had plenty of money. He did eventually pass away in November of 2019. And then I decided that I was going to still leave in December and go to Texas. And I went to Texas. And I remember in the parking lot, I think there was some money left over from what they had given me. And Luke was like, John Butler, he told me to meet you in the parking lot, stall 5. You know, like, but I felt like, and then I meet Luke, and he's got this manila envelope, and I feel like, I'm like, are we doing a drug deal? Like, what? Like, we're in the dark corners of the parking lot, and he gave me an envelope with cash in it to go, because I was still in the middle of this divorce, and it was still taking all my money, and I couldn't really put money in my bank account. So they gave me cash to leave town, and I went there, and I paid rent off that cash for 6 months until I was able to get back on my feet. We never used KW Cares. Not because it wasn't an option, but KW Cares does require you to, present all your financials and use your funds first. And the point was that I didn't want to go destitute as a result of this situation. So my market center paid for my life for 6 months until I was able to get back on my feet in Texas. And that's the story I rarely get to tell about Keller Williams. Somebody was asking me today about the fires and things, and I'm like, the things that go on behind the scenes that people never know about that we do for each other, that's the real story, right? That's the real story that people never ask me. I would love to someday get up on the main stage and say, by the way, backing up, while I was caring for my son, I was in the house 24/7. I was doing his IV. We were in the house, and I wasn't able to leave the house a lot. I used to go to the gym a lot, and I couldn't do that. I remember I went to the grocery store, and he called me and was like, "Oh, Mom, you gotta get home. Somebody gave us a gift." And I'm like, "Somebody brought you something." That's what he said. And I was like, "What did they bring me?" He's like, "Oh, you just got to come home and see." And I was like, wait, let me back up some further. Remember, my house was empty. My house was empty. In 24 hours, Jen's sister, who was a stager, had staged my whole house. We had couches, TVs, furniture. Trish brought over food. I remember my younger son was like, "Well, that lady from your office is outside with a bunch of stuff." And she had gone to Costco and brought us food. And Trish brought all this stuff for us to eat. We ate on Whole Foods for days. Somebody gave me a gift card, $500 gift card to Whole Foods. And I'm like, $500 is a lot of money at the grocery store. Turns out not so much at Whole Foods. But anyways, to the point of what people did for us. But I came home and Jen had bought me a Peloton so that I could still exercise while I was caring for my son. But all these stories that we don't often get to share. We talk about our GCI and we talk about our units and we talk about but the real story is who we are to each other, like when that kind of stuff happens, right? Like that's the real story of who we are. And so, yeah, that happened. And a whole bunch of other things. And now currently my younger son, many of you don't know this part, my younger son is incarcerated facing a life sentence. He's 19 years old. So I've lost both of my children, which is incredibly sad. And your point of like, how do you keep smiling? And I'm thank you for saying that, because on the inside, I don't always feel like, I'm glad I show up like that, because I intend to show up like that. But it's hard to show up like that sometimes. But you said something really good the other day, Perry, about, and I forget what the thing was about the foot, keep your foot in the world.
Yeah.
Say your thing. Yeah.
So Julie and I met last week to prep for this, and I didn't know about Jaden, right?
Jaden, yeah.
I didn't know about Jaden, and I was like, "How you doing, Julia?" And she leads with that, and I'm like,
not good, Perry.
I don't know where to go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it reminded me of Shannon Steers, a bold coach. We took a bold, I think, up in Maple Grove at one point. She was here, and she said, if you're going through personal challenges, I want you to think of it like the Wizard of Oz, when the house is spinning and the bed is spinning and your whole entire personal world is spinning. You have to keep your business foot on the ground, because if your business foot is spinning and your personal life is spinning, your whole entire world's going to crash. And so my question to Julia was, how, like, our son just dies. We have this situation now. Like, how do you get up and live, and how do you move forward in a state where, again, your son just passes away?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the question of even, Brent asking, what's your one thing? You have to still have your passion, your big why still exists, right? And keeping the 1 foot, I loved that analogy, the keeping the 1 foot, because also, by the way, you do have to keep working, which is why I sent you the K-Prep video we had done of pushing through when life happens. Because tragedy happens. Tragedy and loss happens to everyone at some point, regardless of what the kind of loss is, regardless of what the type of tragedy is. It happens to everybody. How do you keep moving, because I can tell you one thing I know for sure, it's a whole lot worse if you don't have any money. Okay, it is a whole lot worse. That situation with my son would have been way worse if I didn't have that $30,000. You know, the situation with my son now would be way worse. I told him, yeah, the only blessing we have is at least I can afford an attorney. You know, you have to still make money, or it's way worse without money, trust me. And so how do you have something to ground you? I love what I do for work. I love meeting the people. I love waking up in the morning and helping people build big lives and build big businesses. And so how do you keep doing that? And I had shared with Perry, we did a Cape prep video called like Pushing Through When Life Happens. And I talked about using the 411. Going back to having a company that has resources and tools that you can use in so many ways. When my son died, I didn't even realize I was as depressed as I was until after the fact. You know, sometimes you're like, you go through something and when you look back on it, you're like, oh, I was in bad shape. And you don't realize at the time that I was in bad shape, but I kept a 411. And I had goals on it that I knew, especially since we were locked in the house and everybody was on, everybody was in quarantine. It's not like I could go out and be around people. You weren't allowed to be around people. But I kept a 411 of the things that I wanted to do this month, the things that I wanted to do this week. And I knew I wasn't going to get to them all, but it just like, I would do one thing. Like getting out of the bed was hard. Getting out of the bed was hard, but I'd get up and be like, okay, call the electric companies on my thing. Boom, look at me, I did that. Oh, I did that. Girl, you did that. Yeah, you called that. And I go lay back down. But I kept the 411 to be like, and to see progress, right? Like, oh, last week I only did one thing on 411. This week I did 3 things on the 411. But to keep the goals in front of you and to keep movement, right? Forward movement. So even the way we use the tools that we have, I use the 411 to keep movement. Even if it was slow movement, I still made goals. I still had things that I wanted to do for the business, and maybe I would only do one thing. In fact, the class, The Color of Real Estate that I wrote, which now 47,000 agents have taken, I was on my 411 then. I wrote that in 2020, when COVID first happened, sitting at home. And then I would cry a little, and then I write something, then I'd cry a little, then I put it, but I did that sitting at home. It was my 411. I just kept, and that, so I don't know, that's kind of I love that analogy of keeping a business foot on the ground. Because then you have something that's constant, and you need the money, friends. You need the money. Yeah, you still need the money. So that's why the TED Talk is called From Setback to like Setup. And because I also believe that you can use those things that happen to you. Like I have a whole different level of empathy for people than I did before. Honestly, I was probably a little judgmental about people before, particularly about my youngest son. Like, when things happen on the news and when like these people do these terrible things, I don't know about you all, but my first question is always like, who is their mother? That was always very judgmental, right? And then I learned like, damn good mother. That ain't got nothing to do with me. Like, wait a minute. And you become a little less judgmental when you experience life things. And I think that helps in leadership of being able to have empathy for other people's situations. And resilience, and like, oh yeah, you can get back up. We can brush yourself off. We're going to try again. So there's certain characteristics that these life challenges bring for you to be really good leaders, but also just really good business people. Again, because we deal with people. We're in a people business where and a lot of times real estate is associated with some major life event. They're either having kids, or they're losing kids, or they're getting a divorce, or they're getting married. Oftentimes the real estate transaction is attached to a major life event. And so using your own personal challenges to develop the empathy and the resilience and the helpfulness to help people get through those challenges, to be not just really good leaders, but also just really good business people, right? So that's what that TED Talk's going to be about. Yeah.
I think we all would like to be the first ones invited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. What was it like? Obviously, you got to work pretty closely with Gary. What was it like? What's it like working with Gary? What have you learned? What lessons have you implemented from that? You and I had a wonderful conversation about some of that last week. What, tell us some stuff that, nobody else would otherwise be able to hear.
People ask that question a lot. What's it like to work with Gary? Gary actually keeps himself in his little dungeon in the basement in his office back there. It's really not all that accessible, except for when he is. he comes out to give of himself to people that come. What is always amazing to me, do you all know that Gary teaches a leadership academy himself there at KW? $199. No one goes. It's so wild to me that he's spending an entire day with people teaching this leadership academy in an environment like this. It's about this many people. And I'm always shocked how many people don't sign up for that when he's spending that amount of time with people. One, obviously people maybe don't know about it, but it's funnier how like the staff hates to hear from him. They feel like they don't understand like the blessing they have of working with Gary Keller. They feel like sometimes like he's wasting their time, but he gives of himself in a way that I think is most interesting. My biggest aha in working with Gary, that he is very unapologetic about what he believes. And I found that to be profound as far as like, particularly for me in the inclusion and belonging. My first interesting experience was with the God family business, because so many people didn't want us to say God. And I was surprised by how many people were just utterly offended by it, regardless of the conversation that's around that. Is like, it's whatever your faith is, or whoever your God is. Nobody's appointing any one God to you, you know. But I shared with him, oh my gosh, Gary, they're really upset about it. They don't, and he was like, well, if we change that, I'm leaving, right? And there would be certain situations where I'd be like, oh, we've got to pivot to satisfy the people. And he refused, very much so like in the lawsuit. He absolutely refused to not speak for the agent. He wholeheartedly would go to his deathbed defending the real estate industry and real estate agents. And I think the biggest aha that people don't know is how much work goes on at KWRI so that we can just do our daily business every day. And it's almost, I told Perry, it's like, we probably have no idea what the military did to protect us today. We're just going about our little lives, you know, eating our food, selling our house, and we have no idea what's going on to keep us safe. It is like the same thing at KWRI. Like, if people knew what goes on there so that you could just go about your little business and sell your little houses, it is a constant war. It is constant lawsuits, constant war, constant attacks on the industry, constant attacks on the agents. And literally what they are doing at KWI is defending you so you have no idea what even happened. Every day it would shock me when people would call with problems to KW. We've got this massive problem, and they'd explain this problem. I'm thinking like, these people have no idea. This whole thing almost fell apart today, you know? Like, and your problem, your massive problem is so minute because the work that's done to provide you with the tools and the resources to be able to build as big of a business as you want, you have no idea how much work is actually going on, unbeknownst to you, to make sure that you can still do that every day. And I don't think that there is anybody out in the industry who is doing that in the way that Gary is doing that. Sure, there's a lot of CEOs. Sure, there's a lot of, but I don't think they put their whole life on the line for it. And I believe that is what Gary does every day. It's fascinating to watch. Also fascinating to watch how ungrateful people are about it. It's almost hard, but again, they don't know. They don't know what happens on their behalf. They don't know what was just done so that you could still sell houses. They have no idea. And so the gratitude isn't there. So he does those things on a daily basis without the thanks, you know, without them. Instead, people are like, what a dumb idea. Why would somebody do? And you have no idea that there was 13 lawsuits behind that decision, you know? So it's a pretty fascinating environment, very fast paced, not for the weak of heart, not at all. Some people would never last a day in that environment, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes people come in and I'll be like, oh, you're new around this part of town. Oh, but it's a lot of hard work goes into running an organization like this.
Have you had more than one fight, Gary?
No, and it wasn't even I believe that's why I was hired, because he welcomes a different perspective. He's very welcoming of, well, how do you think it should be? Well, what do you think it should be? Because most people just tell him whatever he wants to hear. They just tell him whatever he wants to. Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah, whatever. They don't believe it. They think there's a better idea. And that's a horrible place to be, where you're surrounded by yes men that aren't helping you be like, that's actually not how it works. So I think that he welcomes that, as should we all, because it's hard to watch people just tell him, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. It's like, I don't believe he knows half of the things. I was like, do you know what's going on upstairs? Probably not, because people are probably just, oh yeah, everything's great. Yep, yes sir, yes sir. And that's not the best way. I don't think that's what he wants. I think he wants to know what's actually going on, right?
Asked during your divorce, why were you having to give up all the homes and the properties?
Good
and-
question, because my ex-husband was an attorney and it was not a fair fight. I should have got my law degrees, what I should have did. Yeah.
You didn't have a good attorney?
I did have an attorney, and these things turn out whatever. Also, by the way, I was grieving. My child is dying. My child was dead. I don't even have the energy to whatever. Take what you want. I can build it again. It's not a big deal, which I have.
I know, but
Yeah,
still that.
Yeah.
bad.
Tis life, my dear. Tis life. Yeah.
We have about 4 minutes. I think one of the best things you shared about Gary when we talked was just, we are so blessed to have someone who will fight to his
Oh, yeah.
grave for the agent.
Yep.
And if you don't know anything about him and or you're a guest or whatever, that is incredible.
Absolutely. Yep, hands down. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in companies in general, and people are always like, but I will tell you what, I am honored to work for him. I really am. I appreciate the fact that he believes what he believes, that he's very unapologetic about. Remember, I called him one time because I don't remember what people have said about something with it, and he's like, I don't care. And I'm like, we don't care? No, I don't care. Like, I don't care either. We don't care. I don't care. I was like, well, I'm gonna go back and tell them we don't care. Fine. Well, there you have it. We don't care. Yeah, but it was about, because he believes what he believes is the right thing for people. And there are people that don't like the decisions he makes. And I think it was something like that. He made it, they didn't like it. When he started the Social Equity Task Force, he received death threats. But to this day, I even asked him, so I'm at CEO Summit that's coming up at Family Reunion. I'm doing that TED Talk, the why DEI should die, and it's unpopular right now. It is totally unpopular right now. I called him, was like, do you want me to still do this? Because I'm okay not doing it. He was like, absolutely. I absolutely want you to do it. Because that's what he believes. He believes that, no, we are about all the people having access to all the opportunities in all of our market centers. We're going to talk about that. It's like, do you want me to change the title? He was just looking at me like, what are you talking about? We're doing what we're doing. I said what I said. And he's very, he's unapologetic about what he thinks is right. And I find that to be remarkable, because it's really easy to do what the people want you to do, or sway how the people want you to sway, or say what they want you to say. He's not going to do that. I found that out. He's not going to do that. Yeah.
Love it. Time for some questions. What questions do you have?
Betty Jo. Can I tell a quick story before Betty Jo asks her question? So when Betty Jo, to my point of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? I work with a lot of people from a lot of places and a lot of things. And her name was on a form of an agent that was going to be joining Keller Williams. And I said, well, tell me about this Batijo lady. I thought it should be pronounced Batijo. And they were like, what? And I was like, Batijo. And they were like, Betty Jo? Okay, some places they would call that Batijo, but okay. Yes, Betty Jo.
Worse. You have such confidence. I have to ask you, how were you raised?
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, me growing up, I didn't have any. Real estate has given me my confidence in life. So your mother, your father, how did they raise you?
I don't know that it was a good thing. I've always been this way. And that's why I say I don't know if it was a good thing. My mom had a lot of trouble with me. Yeah. I've always been this way. And I guess I wouldn't even say that I've always been confident. Probably not. I'm confident in what I believe, and I'm confident in what I believe I know. Somebody asked me that about the TED Talk. They say, how did you have the confidence to go out there? Because I was confident in what I was talking about. Like if you asked me to come up here and teach you a class on command, for example, I actually went with David Voorhees one time on a road trip to teach command. I was just like, this is so humiliating. I'm gonna sit down. I don't know jack about command, okay? I really don't. And I show up nothing like this because I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm not confident in what I'm talking about. But much like, Gary believe in what he believes, I believe in what I'm saying. I believe in what I believe. And I don't mind speaking up for that. I don't mind speaking up for people. But as part of my personality has always been a little too aggressive. I actually used to work on a little aggressive. I'm glad now it just comes out as confidence. It didn't used to come out as confidence. It used to be like, she's way too much. She's doing way too much. Yeah. But I think it's just part of my personality of being that. I'm also, by the way, the youngest of 3 older brothers. So all my life I've been fighting. Yeah. They didn't care nothing about the fact that I was a girl. I've been fighting them out, but I also am the baby of 3 older brothers. And so it caused me to be very boisterous and loud and that. Yeah. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
So what's next for you? I mean, I know we're all like, we've got our goals that we set for 25 and we have our wishes and everything. Do you have anything that you're intentionally shooting for? Or are you just riding, I think you said earlier, riding the wave of life and just seeing where it's going to take you, or?
It's a good question. Right now I'm focused on our market center, and being the OP at our market center. What I would really like to do, I joked my TED Talk was about because when I first got to Texas, Elon Musk and I were on the front page of the Austin Business Journal as Texas top 100 people to watch in 2022. That's how I started out, and me thinking that we were like friends until I found out we weren't. But I, much to that topic, I probably, our world for inclusion and belonging will shift. I will not always be on that journey. I'd like to pass that torch off. But I did tell them, I said, I honestly would like to work for people like Elon Musk and Trump. I would like to offer a different perspective of I don't mind going into challenging situations. I have been in a lot, this role, talk about confidence, this role has presented so many challenging situations. Like what people think is the job is not the job. Really what I do is travel around the world and kumbaya amongst people who can't get along. We have a lot of people who simply cannot get along. In our market centers even. Like the biggest challenge for me was that people still to this day have no idea what this has to do with us, but the Israeli-Hamas war was by far the biggest challenge that Mark King, Jason Abrams, and I ever had. The expectation of what people were expecting us to do was new. And like Jason Abrams said it best, he was like, listen, friends, I didn't get this job because I know how to navigate world wars. I was just really good at selling open houses, and so it put us in spaces that are incredibly challenging to mitigate because we have some market centers that were half Arabic, half Jewish, and they were not getting along. I mean, the war was happening in the market center, and literally traveling around and helping people get along. And I think that I do have, even if it's something that I never signed myself up for this job, by the way. I never applied for this job. I was sought out and I was called and I answered the call. And much like that, to your point, I feel some deep desire to help bridge those environments where people simply cannot get along. It is not that damn hard to get along. People make it way harder than it needs to be. And I feel like I have a special calling to be able to do that. I've been able to go into some really challenging situations, and I always tell them and do a kumbaya. Okay, everybody, we're gonna kumbaya now, But I don't know where that will lead me. I'm in a John Maxwell, I'm coaching with John Maxwell right now. And the only reason I did it wasn't actually, I mean, aside from the fact that I love John Maxwell, was because there's not a lot of Gary Kellers out there. There's not a lot of CEOs that will stand up and say, no, I believe in people getting together and I believe in people getting a fair chance. And I do believe in getting along and we're going to do it. There's not a lot of leaders like that. But the reality is people that look like Gary Keller and Elon Musk and John Maxwell do have the influence and the power to do what Gary did. And I would love to help them do that. I would love to help. I would love if more leaders that have that kind of privilege and power would say and influence. I want to bring people together. And I would love to find those people and help those people. I signed up for the John Maxwell, not just because I love John Maxwell, but because there was a whole bunch of other CEOs that I felt like I could help. Whether they know they need the help or not, Gary didn't know he needed the help. When I got there, what they thought they needed was, I was like, they just wanted me to teach the class, Barry. They were like, can you come here and teach the class? And I said, is that what you think you need? That is not what you need in these market centers where there is literally a full-blown war going on in that market center. And the team leader sitting there like, oh, I don't know what. Team leader wants to go under the desk and cry, like, and I get it. I want to cry for you, like, so there's not a lot of people who are leading that have that kind of heart, or if they do, they have no idea how to do it. Like, how do we make these people get along? And I feel like I can help. So I don't know where that leads. Yeah.
Amazing. We need to break out of respect for everyone's time. This has been an incredible
Thank you.
honor,
You guys are
Julia.
coming here. Thank you.
Let's give her an amazing. We're here to help you in any way we can, and we are grateful for all you.
A request, real quick. People always ask me what it's like to work with Gary Keller. The real question is what it's like to work with Mark King. One of the best humans I've ever met in my
Yes.
entire life. Mark is coming to Minneapolis next week on Wednesday to do wealth building. 90% of what I learned about business and wealth, particularly, I learned from Mark King. Dude is my hero, and a great human. He's coming here on next Wednesday to do a wealth building seminar. So if you haven't signed up, I just would hate for you to miss it. I would hate for you to miss it. So I think you all have the information to register for that.
We'll send it out again.
Yeah.
Yep, I know the ALC is going.
I wouldn't miss that if I were you. The real question is what is it like to work with Mark King? And he's going to give you a taste of that on next week.
And it's at Braemar from 9 to noon, I think, right?
9 to 1, yeah.
9 to 1, super close. Everybody sign up.
Still 49.
Yeah, price went up after he did the webinar thing. It's, I think, 79.
Priceless.
Yeah, I was gonna say which I pay $7.99. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you all. Have an awesome day.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, guys.